Prince Renon is a lecturer at the University of Rennes and a researcher associated with Atelier National de Research Typography and the Alexander Koyve Research Center of EHELS CNRM. Her work focuses on the relationship between design and science, relying more specifically in recent years on the graphic archives of research. She is the initiator of the A&R Design SHS project 2021 to 2025, dedicated to the archives of Jacques Gaudil's Laboratoire de Graphie, and is currently conducting a survey on the archives of Adrian Critical Writing. The topic of the presentation today concerns the history of graphic semiology and typography between France and India. This presentation aims to introduce the archival research work and proposes to discuss a program of questions about how the reception and legacy of Jacques Gaudil and Adrian Critical work drive this investigation. Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much for that wonderful invitation to share my work with the community and the students.
Just you. You that now.
Oh, I can speak louder.
Yeah, then.
No.
You're okay. So, thank you for your introduction. Thank you very much. As you said, so the topic of this presentation concerns, as it is written on the screen, the history of graphic semiology and typography between France and India. More specifically, I will begin my presentation by a short introduction of the concept of semiology, because I'm not sure everybody here is very empowered by that concept. And then I will introduce you also to the Laboratoire de Graphie of Jacques Bertin, and I will tell you what this lab more specifically, and how it is important to study that laboratory with the history of knowledge and data visualization knowledge. And then with some conceptual details on the concept of graphic semiology, I will more tell you about the inquiries that brings me to India, and recently my work on the archives of the writings of Adrian Critical, reason for which I'm here to as one Tabatel, who generously talked with me about his work and collaboration with Critical. So that's it. So, appearance and development of modern semiology. So, can anybody here have ever heard about the term of semiology? No? Okay. So, as you will be able to have this presentation if you want to keep it for the archives of the university. So, semiology is a term that exists since antiquity, and it first has been used to describe medicine, because in Greek, ancient Greece, semion, it means sign, and logos, discourse, science. So the semiology is the science of science. So I will describe more precisely what we can understand as science. But semiology, and it, like semiology, sorry, there is a mistake in my slide, is the interpretation of science, of symptoms and not symptoms. It's Hippocrates, I've heard about Hippocrates, who's the first to describe the semiology as the science for medicine, as science equals the symptoms equals that index. Medical semiology is interested in the what? Semiology in human science, in social science, what I am here to talk to you about, is interested more in the how. Study of the non-verbal signs. That's why semiology, very recently and most of the time, is used to study visual representation. Because in visual representation and information representation, everything is composed by signs and necessitates sometimes signs to be understood also. It's a general science of sense. The concept of the sign has existed since antiquity, as I told you before, in the philosophy of language, in Plato and Aristotle text, but I won't detail it here. It's Umberto Eco in a book called Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language, in 1988, who has proposed 5 key concepts to study and understand semiotics and semiology. The sign, the signified, the metaphor, the symbol, and the code. 5 key concepts that concerns also graphicism. It's very important, the birth of the semiology at the beginning of the 20th century, because the 20th century is very birth of a lot of social sciences in general, and human science also. It's the birth of the psychoanalysis, the birth of the modern linguistics. Saussure, I wrote the name on the screen, is considered as the father of the semiology, of the structuralist semiology, the semiology of linguistics. Modern logic, again in mathematics, theory of relativity, Einstein in physics, discovery of radioactivity, Marie Curie, phenomenology, Husserl, ways of thinking about language, Husserl, Wittgenstein, and also invention of telecommunication and semiotics. So really, at the beginning of the 20th century, a lot of science on society and human culture and the diffusion of that culture are emerging. And semiology is at the intersection of that new disciplines. It is a general movement that gives rise to the desire to found a general and global science dealing with the different types of science with which we communicate, semiology. It's St. Augustine in the 4th century in De Magistro already wrote definitive welding between the theory of science and the theory of language. Saussure wrote systems of science expressing ideas here and now, synchronicity versus Japanicity. You know synchronicity and Japanicity? Okay, so synchronicity is a study in a longitudinal study in the time, and synchronicity is at one time determinate. Okay. Of the inventory of science and of the rules that govern the combination. There's the opposition between language, socially limited stock of elements and rules, if we can define language like this, linguistic language, to speech, historicized and unlimited implementation of message. We do not communicate only with language, but also with all kinds of other signs, such as symbolic rites, forms of politeness, military signals, etc. And the science of science accommodates everything, and not only linguistic science, which is very important because when you integrate the fact that you can build some grammar, of science, you can think about science also of the visual, which is very important to build and transmit information, but also to decrypt and have a critical way to understand and to read it. So, the laboratory graphic. So, this lab was founded in 1954 by an historian called two historians called Lucien Febvre and Fernand Braudel. directed by Jacques Bertin in Paris. It was said to be a supporting laboratory, cartography laboratory. It was also a research laboratory called Laboratoire de Graphie. And it's really known for the publication of a book called Graphic Semiology in 1967. I will focus on this laboratory because I have this huge research project I've begun to work on. I will explain all the details just after in 2015. Because the EHESS, so this institution in France is very important for the research. In France, you have universities, you have also private schools, and you have research laboratories. The main public institution for research laboratories is the CNRS, the National Center for Scientific Research. And the EHESS is a school, a special research school that has been created quasi exclusively to form people to research. So it was the school of research in the middle of the 20th century, and Jacques Bertin was proposed to fund and to be at the direction of that lab, which can be considered as the first graphic design kind of laboratory applied to social science. So it's very important because there are relations with historians, anthropologists, researchers in literature, in philosophy, in mathematics, in all the humanities and also applied science. And the job, the objective of that lab was to produce the images for all the publication of the researcher. And they invented many methods to represent graphically the social science, the statistics, and all the data of the researchers at that time. We can find different phases and involving levels of abstraction in this lab, because in this lab also, the particularity is that they also invented new method of automatic treatment for information at the very beginning of computer science. So this is a photography of Jacques Bertin in the lab with that particular method called matrix, graphic matrix, because it's a new method invented for the treatment of the statistics. So this is the photography of the lab in 1964. As you see, many women in the lab, but we only remember the name of Jacques Bertin. This is another question. This is the photography of the former entry of the lab that I took in 2015 when I began to work on the project. All the archives were in some furniture in that place, but nobody could study it because when the lab closed in 2000, all the people of the lab went in different other disciplines and different labs, and everything that had been developed in this lab has been lost. So all the work is to recover by the archives all the history of that very important interdisciplinarity lab that a day and another has completely vanished. So I will show you more archives, but just to have a look at the diversity of things we can find here. So, first period, 1957, 1967 gestation. I will present very rapidly the four or five cases. So, first phase of the lab was redrawing the researchers' sketches. So many people in the lab were painter, cartographer, or excellent people doing excellent way of drawing and artists. So it was really original and quite, I don't know how to say, innovative. Reflecting on the place of images in publication and the nature of the data, trying to make the nuance in the definition is something that has inhabited Jacques Bertin for all his career, is to define useful image and useless image for the understanding. Because there is something that all his life trying to define. And define visual variables and first rules of construction of the graphic image by a grammar based on the laws of visual perception and the first automatic facts. So this is an experimentation. Unfortunately, we don't have this machine in the archives, but we try to build a new one. We know, and that's also one point of the inquiry that I will talk about later. Bertin and the Laboratoire de Graphique worked with IBM to experiment some automatic lithography with some machine like that. And some years after, they worked with the composer. You know, it was the first automatic type machine. I don't know. Yes, thank you. It was the first semi-automatic. You know, they had some bolts that turning in all the direction. And Adrien Portugal designed the Univer type for the same machine as Bertin has worked on. And so I tried to find a way to find if they met at one moment. And because they worked at the same period, but some things that can be understood. So the second phase is 1968-1985. Matrix processing of data and lessons learned. Multi-entry tables made manually with sets of dominoes with holes. So you see, so this is Monique, the name that I don't know her last name. Actually, what they were doing is that they were collecting data in field work. For example, I don't know, statistic in agronomy for the rice in some region. They took all the data, and with a system of dominoes, there are 10 grades of dominoes, and they calculate with a statistic which branch of domino can be used, and that form some kind of this kind of representation. And graphically, with the clusters of the black concentration, they can identify with the habits where are the most interesting results. So the method before the computer was to use a graphic, what they call the graphic model of statistics, to identify clusters of data. So it was a new invention, a new method to have a treatment for what we could call big data now, but at the time they didn't have computer. Public article, papers, and cardboard files, and they used the first TNC, matrix processing and mapping software on iPod 2 to display and process observable matrices more quickly. And they also did lessons and activities of initiation to graphics. So this is typically a photo of the lab. What is also extremely interesting in the lab is that we have a photo of the work of the lab. It is kind of, sociology of science before sociology of science, because we have videos, we have photographies, we have letters, many things that are documenting the work in the lab. Where usually scientists in the lab do their work and do not anticipate the way their work will have an heritage. Jacques Bertin and all the scientists of the lab anticipate everything, and it is very precious for us. So this is Renon, also in the lab with the graphics. Picture. Third and fourth steps. Okay, so third one is 1985-1995, development of new techniques, computer tools in full expansion in the lab. The problem of the expansion of the lab is that all the methods that they were inventing were vanishing because of the computer. So everything became obsolete. Obsolete CMT software and lack of support from the administration for the development of a global overprocessing project. They wanted to do some pedagogical research also. They began to teach in elementary school how to do research study, how to learn to do research very soon and very elementary school by graphics, and they wanted to make new pedagogical environments using research and using graphic to have a better education. The government, French government, began to develop this in several schools around Paris and around Lyon, but the government changed. And also the expansion of informatics made that completely useless. They were also using a huge software called Magma and also an Amado software. This software began to decline, and so it was a loss for the lab. And finally, the abrupt stop of the use of the visual variable, and the development of graphics. After 1995, cartography workshop at Sciences Po Paris was created. After the close of the lab, it created the cartography workshop at Sciences Po, and all the explorations began to be abroad and other than the documents. So I have some pictures of the archives here. I can't comment them, but maybe it's better than I show pictures, and I have many things in my computer, so maybe it's better to talk about that after in informal way. So the semiology of graphics in itself. So also called la graphique. So la graphique is a system of science which allows to transcribe the relations of difference, order, or proportionality existing between qualitative and quantitative data. Sorry, I will delete the words for the its domain extends the construction of all maps, usually differentiated between topographic and thematic, to the construction of diagrams. Construction that are okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I have many mistakes when I export this. Sorry for that. Construction of diagrams and networks, organization charts, genealogies. La graphique structures the construction of images from a grammar that relies on the laws of the visual perception, universal perception, the graphic semiology. These are the texts of Jacques Derrida, not mine. The visual language is linked to an temporal and spatial system, different from the verbal language, linked to a temporal and linear system. It results from it that the vision of an image is immediate in its totality at the global level, built according to the rules of this grammar. It is immediately comprehensible. It is necessary to distinguish two uses of the graphic: the communication graphic, the graphic of statement. Semiology of the graphic system. You want me to switch something?
Yeah.
Information analysis. And information is a series of correspondence observed between distinct sets or variation concepts or components. All correspondences must meet an invariant definition. As for Bertin, the precise knowledge of these elements is the only way to understand complex information, define the best graphic transcription, write the title and the legend. The means of the graphic semiology is the visual variables. A designer has 8 sensitive variations, which are the components of the expression system, the visual variables. The position in the space of the shape, top, bottom, left, right, is in the concept of Bertin. The size, the value, the grain, the color, the orientation, and the shape, and the noise. The rules. The graphic representation makes it possible to reduce the non-memorizable exhaustive recording to a communication memorable because it is simplified. For communication to be useful, simplifying is not to extract a part of the information, it is to process it. That is to say, implementing the process of ordering and categorizing in order to discover the grouping contained in the process information. That's what I showed you, the clusters of that information. Reduce new components or categories in reduced number and consequently easier to memorize than the exhaustive information. It's choice, hierarchy, order, and formatting. This implies 3 main rules. Simplification is an obligation to the act of the communication. The graphic treatment of the information is carried out by the simplification of the image. The simplification of the image by setting in order does not remove any correspondence and preserves the completeness of the information. Treatment of the visual information. Traitement de l'information visuelle. Tourism. The most basic graphic interpretation is thus a combination of semantic and semiotic elements. Semantic is meaning, semiotic is the organization and system of sounds. Bertin distinguishes 4 predictive qualities that visual variables can communicate, namely. The first one, selective. It can then be visually identified by spontaneously distinguishes it from others. Associative. It can then be visually grouped with others based on obvious common characteristics. Ordinational. We can deduce a sequential relationship of qualitative order between the co-present elements. And quantifying, one can establish a rigid sequential order based on the nature of the co-present elements. So, first research project I built was in 2015 when the archives of the lab had to go from the EHSS, the picture I showed you before, to the National Archives. It was the most important fund the National Archives had ever had in town, and so they needed also someone to study it. I proposed first of all to do an event for the anniversary commemoration of the creation of the HSS in 2017. But the archives were so huge that I built an exhibition, and a small exhibition, because we have, as to say, we have 2 funds. One, I will tell more detail after. One fund is in the National Archives. It is constituted by the archives of the lab. So 40 years of comment and of work with all the researchers of social science in France. So you imagine we have something like 200,000 documents, I think. And sometimes we have 2,000. We have some documents with which are linked to other research projects in other institutions. So it is very increasing. And the other fund are the personal archives of Jacques Bertin at the National Library. And so the most beautiful challenge and the most difficult challenge also is to combine these two fonts. Sorry. So this was the first project. The type design of the project has been done by a French graphic designer called Renon Anne who was a friend of mine. We did our studies together at the Fine Arts School of Valence in France. And this type of research was based on some experimental visual letters Bertin did for UNESCO. Because UNESCO in the 1960s wanted a new visual identity. And so they asked Bertin to propose something. It has not been accepted, but we have this type experimentation in the fund, and the Roman decided to use it to the visual identity of the research project. In now developing a variable font for the 2005 Type 100 in France, which is called the Bertin. So, different stage of study of the fonts. First project began in June 2015. I did the scientific coordination and the curatorship of the exhibition. It was a partnership between NHUSS, National Archives, and DNF. And the orientation of the research project was the 50 years of graphic semiology in 2017. It was a triptych event, a retrospective exhibition, a study day, I can say like a huge day of conference, and a research forum workshop with art schools. 4 thematic axes were developed for this first project that are still developed now. The first one was the collaboration and the daily life of the laboratory. Second was Jacques Bertin's treatise on graphic semiology and the stages of elaboration of the semiotic system. Third one was the plasticity and visual expressiveness of cartographic research. And the last one was the pedagogical development of graphic semiology. So this is the link. Maybe I can show you after, but it's all in French, but you can see the name of the people. The archives in itself. So, agenda of pictures. These are some metrics treatment, where in most of the project, a matrix treatment. These are the what are called points Bertin. You know, in the visual variable, the density is very important. He uses that. I will show you pictures after, because he wanted one of the visual perception variable is that the more density color you have, the more numerous thing you will project on that density. So he elaborates some points of density to represent that. You know, for example, also here, the size. You know, this is another visual variable. The size, the more the size is evident for us now, but at that period it was completely new to represent things like that. So it's demography. These are plasticity and treatment of relief. All is done by hand, so you can see the talent of Jacques Bertin. It is in color pencil. This is rotting, you know, the pencil you use for architecture. This is a very, very small detail of the map of France. And the map of France is long like this, I guess, and is folded. So we never unfolded it, but it's something very, very huge. And this is a detail, I think it's like this. Okay, so this is a plastic mat. To explain the process, they began to draw the map. Then they did a version in Achille. I don't know the name in English, sorry. When you do the preparatory for a sculpture, you have some. Yes, yes, and they do a prototype with that, and then they put some plastic on it, and yes. So this is the result. Some experimentation with color. We have some things like that in the archives with many layers. And the experimentation with the kids, I think it's it's elementary. It's 3-4 years old. Yes, it's 3 to 5, I guess. And so they experimented how they can propose to learn to read using some pictographs. And these are the experimentation on the matrix for the kids of 9 to 11 years old. Bertin has been requested in 1977 to do some courses in the National Decorative Art School in Paris, and his students was the teachers. He wanted the director and the government wanted Bertin to teach how to represent pictograms and universal language to the teachers so that they could use it in their course. And these are the experimentation and the results of the courses of the graphic designer from the Miguel. You know him, maybe? Okay. And he gave me this experience, and he used it in his course with the students because he had a huge project for the video, for the television, and so he used these visual variables to represent the video. There's another experimentation for demographic. There's another maps. It's all done by hand. Okay, so the project now has another, has more potential because we have a fund for the National Research Agency of France for 4 years to digitalize the archives, to do a huge collaborative platform in open access online so that you can consult the archive. That's why I'm here. So the name in French of the project is Design graphique, recherche et patrimoine gestion sociale, le laboratoire de graphique de Jacques Bertin, it's an international consortium, Centre Alexandre Paylet, University of Rennes, National Archives, National Library, the lab of the CNRS of Geography, lab ACT, which is Multimedia and Information Processing of La Sorbonne, at Geneva, it's the High School of Design and Art of Geneva, and the University of Lausanne. The current issues of the project are from graphic semiology to information design, history of graphic semiology and relations with social science research, diffusion and network of concepts, impact on the field of design and different disciplines in the international context. Reconceiving Bertin's concept. How can new computer tools contribute? The objectives of the project: study Jacques Bertin, considered as a great theorist and cartography and precursor of data visualization. Bertin's laboratory of graphism at the PHE and then at the HSS, which articulates in a novel way the production of images, data visualization, and scientific research. Shed light and put into historical perspective the contemporary rise of data visualization and imaging technologies in science, and to explore their implication for scientific epistemology in the humanities and social science in particular, promote scientific culture in heritage and online context by highlighting the humanities and social science as an integral part of scientific culture. Different stages of the project: processing and development of the Bertin archives and the graphic laboratory. We are 7 researchers in the consortium right now, and with all the constellation of other researchers in other disciplines that can contribute also. As for me, my scientific tasks and objectives are I'm responsible for the control archives. So it's me who select all the archives that will be digitalized for the platform. And I also work on all the correspondence of Jacques Bertin with other researchers and the international reception of his concept. So in the processing and development of the Bertin archives, we want to do the examination and study of the fonts, of course, interdisciplinary, historical and technical scientific tasks such as the research seminar and thematic working groups, correspondence and visit to international archives, online collaborative research platform, contribution of graphic design to research and scientific heritage, and pedagogical collaboration and reactualization of data concepts. We have a page which is just a small page that presents the team and the objective. We are building it in English and also in Japanese right now, and we have an Instagram where I post some pictures. Okay, semiology of graphic in India. So what brings me here is last year there was an exhibition entitled Science Beyond Borders. An exhibition that was dedicated to the relation in the 19th and 20th century, collaborative relations between France and India in science and technology. Each town where the exhibition was presented has one special characteristic topic that was kind of a huge day of conference each time. And I was invited in Hyderabad because the scientific characteristic that was due to Hyderabad was the visual analytics. In fact, why visual analytics in Hyderabad? So this is a summary that is written, that has been written for the Science Beyond Borders exhibition. So I read it and then I will explain. So a professor of geography, Jean Gallet. Jean Gallet was a very famous geography professor in France, specialized in Africa. But he was at the beginning at the University of Strasbourg, and then he was at the University of Rouen. One of his best students, Luc de Goldberry, had a grant to do field work in India, in Andhra Pradesh, in the early 1960s. And he did his PhD on the census and administrative organization of the region in Bengal near around the village, La Chana Bolivie. And when he finished his thesis with Changale in 1961, yes, so initiative for geographic research in United and Bangladesh in 1962 with the collaboration of Osmania University, yes. So Luc de Golbery finished his PhD in 1963 and was contacted by the Ministry of the Development of the Bangladesh to develop other projects. His wife came to join him in India, and they worked for the government of Bangladesh for 54 years. They live in Hyderabad, still live in Hyderabad now, and I came last year to a conference and the Science Beyond Borders exhibition. This exhibition was for visual analytics dedicated to their work. And they have all their archives since 1961, archives of papers, of course, archives of work, archives of correspondence, of student material, but also computer archives. They have all their machine till 1960. So it's very precious because they have also conserved all the software and all the data. So there are many material we can work on. Sorry. Oh, I won't detail of this. So you can read it. You can read it online, and you will have it. But what is important is that Anne and Luc so have contributed to the internationalization, you can say, and that's not very English, of the concept of Bertin, because they bring all the matrix method and all the visual variables of Bertin in their work with the Bangladesh government. And what is very interesting also, more interesting even, is that when the lab of Bertin closed in France, they continue to develop some methods here in India. And they develop many computer original methods based on the concepts of Bertin. So many things are very huge discoveries they did here for the statistics and the computer statistics. And the other things is that, so it's more complicated to explain because it's a very recent work. Adrian Frutiger, the Swiss typographer, lived in France at the end of the 1960s and the beginning of the 1970s. He has a huge work on type design, but he has also written some major books because he was very interested in the history and the relations between men, signs, and symbols. Two major books has been written, Signs and Symbols, Their Design and Meaning, first published in 1980, but we have found since the beginning of the 1970s, the same time Bertin was writing the semiology of graphic in Paris. So these two researchers, eminent researchers, interested in graphic representation, interested in semiology and in graphic system. Bertin more with the scientist way to build a kind of grammar. Frutiger more in a holistic way to understand science as a way of thinking. So these two opposite kind of way of thinking were reunited in Paris, and they have at this time many people in common, but we have no proof that they actually met each other. And what is also very interesting is that 10 years after, less than 10 years after, Frutiger is in India and does the visual identity of the National Institute of Design. And you work with Frutiger for the Devanagari and many things. And Bertin is also coming to India to visit Anne and Luc de Golbery, who works on the graphical methods in Uttar Pradesh. But most of all, at the same period, they both worked for IBM. And again, no proof that they met in IBM buildings or in IBM meeting, but it must have, yes, it must have been. So my inquiry here is to find the proof that that two persons, that two researchers have an history in France and have also an intellectual history in India. And I begin right now to do that inquiry, thanks to Professor Mandela. So it's a bit longer than no. So it was clear and understandable. Yes. Do you have some questions? Or we can also talk around the table with all the material. I have all the pictures of the archives of Bertin, all the pictures of the Portugal archives, so I can show you many things I have. Yes, just to show you the composite of IBM. Oh, sorry. I can speak now. Okay. Okay. So, I don't have enough connection.